I'm Jake Hyde. Sometimes I feel like a fish out of water. For as long as I can remember, I've dreamt of a world I've never seen. I have this strange ability to control water. Is that my purpose? Then there's Kenny. I've known him since middle school. He's always been outspoken in a way I wish I could be. Should I tell my best friend Maria how I feel about Kenny? I've hidden myself so much, even I'm not sure who I am now. Will I be doomed to drift through life in a sea of secrets?
And this is the book, You Brought Me the Ocean. And I'm featuring the author, Alex Sanchez, on the show today. I could not be more excited. I'm Nicholas Snow. My pronouns are he, him, and his. This is Notes from Hollywood on the PromoHomo.TV network. For historic point of reference, yesterday we learned that Kamala Harris is Biden's pick as his running mate. And today, this afternoon, after this is live, that is going to be, they're going to be appearing together for the first time in public. I think it's always important when I'm doing a live interview for my viewers to know the context in which it's taking place. We're in the middle of the pandemic, and we're in the middle of a historic moment for so many different reasons. And every moment of our lives is shaped by the previous one. And when I think about this book that is, I actually have described this book in my own promotion of it as life-saving. And the reason that I call it a life-saving book is that we know that suicide among LGBTQ youth is at a much higher rate than suicide among youth in other categories. And if I had a book like this when I was in high school, life could have been very different. And I know that even today, as many strides that have been made in the area of equality, for many individuals, it's as if no progress has been made, because bullying is alive and well in our school systems, sanctioned by our society, sanctioned by the highest leader in the land at this current time. And some people are trapped in families and in communities that do not support them. And there's just so many different reasons to have affirming stories for all of us. And I am celebrating Kamala Harris's pick to the position of running mate for President Biden. And I cannot imagine, I have no way of knowing what it must be like for black women today to see that happening. I know what it was like for me when I first saw a really good representation of who I thought I was as a gay man in culture. So there's so many important things that we can talk about in the interview today. Before I bring on Alex and talk about the book more, I just want to say that this marks the conclusion, the finale of the launch of the summer season of the expansion of PromoHomo.TV into an online broadcast network with 5 different series. You can find them all at the website PromoHomo.TV, and of course follow me on social. I'm launching a 10-week fall series in late September. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. But between now and then, I'm going to be producing a lot of regular content that you can tune into. And I'm going to be back with Alex Sanchez after this.
I'm Jake Hyde. Sometimes I feel like a fish out of water. For as long as I can remember, I've dreamt of a world I've never seen. I have this strange ability to control water. Is that my purpose? Then there's Kenny. I've known him since middle school. He's always been outspoken in a way I wish I could be. Should I tell my best friend Maria how I feel about Kenny? I've hidden myself so much, even I'm not sure who I am now. Will I be doomed to drift through life in a sea of secrets?
You Brought Me the Ocean is the book. Alex Sanchez has published 8 novels, including the American Library Association Best Book for Young Adults, Rainbow Boys, and the Lambda Award-winning So Hard to Say. His novel Bait won the Tomas Rivera Mexican-American Book Award and the Florida Book Award Gold Medal for Young Adult Literature. An immigrant from Mexico, Alex received his master's in guidance and counseling and worked for many years as a youth and family counselor. Now, when not writing, he tours the country talking with teens, librarians, and educators about books, diversity, and acceptance. He lives in Penfield, New York, where I will be connecting with him in a moment. But this book is a collaboration. It's a graphic novel. Alex wrote the stories, but Julie Maroh is the illustrator. They are a cartoonist, illustrator, feminist, and LGBTQ activist from northern France. They wrote and illustrated the graphic novel Blue is the Warmest Color, about the life and love of 2 young lesbians, which was adapted into the award-winning, the Palme d'Or Cannes Film Festival award-winning film of the same name. So while Julie is not on the show today, I wanted to give her their pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I wanted to give them a shout out. So it's just an amazing work of art, this book. And joining me on the show today, I have Alex Sanchez. Welcome, Alex.
Hey, Nicholas. Great. Good to be here with you.
It's nice to see you as well. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you and I met in Dallas, Texas at the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association conference the weekend before 9/11. Am I remembering that correctly?
I can't remember exactly when, but that sounds right. I remember that the deluxe hotel suite, the rooftop suite that you had at a hotel there where you threw a party for the conference. So yeah. That sounds about right.
Yes, that was it. And you know what? That was the weekend before 9/11, and you had a book signing at the conference.
That's right, for Rainbow Boys. That's right. I'm remembering now. Yeah.
Yes. And then you and we both ended up living in Thailand at the same time.
Yep. What a coincidence.
And here were you reunited. So
in fact, you know what, Nicholas? I think I moved into the apartment that you once had there in Thailand.
Did you move into the 3rd floor of the small building in the Peacock Court facing the garden in the house next door?
No, into the big building.
Oh, the 2-bedroom.
The 2-bedroom that then went to Frank, and then we got it after Frank.
Oh, wow. Okay. You know what? That's a whole mini-series itself. So one of the great things about this book is that it's set among kids that are in high school age. And one of the influences of a character in this book is our mutual friend, Patty Talahangva, who I know from high school. That reminds me, for anyone who's watching live, if you comment while you're broadcasting live, I have the ability to put you right into the show. I can put your remarks right on camera. So I wanted you to know that. So Patty Talahangva, I met her before our senior year in high school. And one of the characters in your book is modeled after Patty, influenced by Patty. And it's so exciting to see Julie's sketches of Patty at the end of this book as in terms of the influences for the character. That was just thrilling.
Yeah, the way that came about is in all my books, going way back to Rainbow Boys. Rainbow Boys, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's about a love triangle between three high school senior boys. Of course, I recommend reading it. And anyway, part of the challenge with writing that book is that all three of the boys, they're all the same age. They go to the same school in the same community. And so one of the challenges was how to distinguish each of the boys. And so because of my Latino background, I'm from Mexico, I'm Mexican American, but with a Cuban mom, I thought, well, I'll make one of the boys be a Latino character. And I got so much positive feedback about that from young people, Latinx young people, who it can be so powerful when we see representations of ourselves in print. And the same way you were saying at the introduction, how much a book like this would have meant to you as a young person, as a queer young person growing up, the same sort of impact in terms of ethnicity or racial diversity. When we can see representations of ourselves, it's just such a validation that we exist, that we have a voice. And so I got so much feedback on that. And then DC was so embracing of diversity. DC Comics was so embracing of diversity and inclusion that for this book, I one of the things, it's like, well, it's set in the Southwest. We got to have a Native American character, at least one. And so that turned out to be Ms. Archer. And Julie Maroh, the artist, was very open to, well, can you give me some ideas of what the Ms. Archer character might look like? And I said, well, I happen to have this friend, Patty, who's Hopi. And if you like, I can ask her if she'd be willing to be the model, the likeness for this. And so that's how that came about.
I really, really love that. I'd love to. I'm going to make myself full screen. Just a second. I want to make myself full screen for a minute. So I want to just get into some of the quotes about the book and the synopsis. And then I'm going to bring Alex back in. So Cameron Johnson, an actor on Batwoman, writes, Sanchez and Maroh perfectly display a remarkable narrative cemented in truth and the many forms of heartbreak. The added magic of making existing superhero characters so relatable is proof that DC has a long future ahead of them in the young adult space. And Melissa Marr, New York Times bestselling author of Wicked Lovely, writes, powerful and beautiful from start to finish. Don't miss this fish out of water story of love, friendship, and finding the courage to be your true self. I'll let Alex listen while I talk about him. So the book jacket explains, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, Jake Hyde doesn't swim, not since his father drowned. Luckily, he lives in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. And by the way, in the book, we learn how Truth or Consequences got its name. It's really hysterical. Yet he yearns for the ocean and is determined to leave his hometown for a college on the coast. His best friend Maria, however, wants nothing more than to stay in the desert, and Jake's mother encourages him to always play it safe. There's nothing safe about Jake's future, not when he's attracted to Kenny Lou, swim team captain and rebel against conformity. And in the movie version, there's bound to be high school guys in Speedos, just so you know. And certainly not when he secretly applies to the University of Miami. Jake's life begins to outspace his small town's namesake, which doesn't make it any easier to come out to his mom or Maria or the world. But Jake is full of secrets, including the strange blue markings on his skin that glow when in contact with water. What power will he find when he searches for his identity, and will he turn his back to the current or dive headfirst into the waves? So that's my poetic reading of the book jacket. But getting back to what you were saying, Alex, before I wanted to give the viewers more information about the story. I love it that it's filled with black and brown people, and that and among the white people are the villains, and that is a comforting reversal of the way that people have been portrayed historically, and I am sure that the continuing outpouring of appreciation is ongoing. What would you like to add?
Well, just again, what I was saying, that it's been so important for me to have that representation of of all people, and that DC was so inclusive of that.
Well, I love that as well. Now, if you don't want to speak specifically about your personal arrangement in the way this book was published, I'd love for you to talk in general about how an author might respond to an offer that resulted in this book, because there are many people. Because this show looks about the business of what we do as well, and I know that DC would want to develop content that could ultimately end up being a television show or a series or a movie. And so and this book is set in an existing universe of characters that other people created. So when an author is approached to write a book that includes existing intellectual property, but you're expanding that, does that author does the author receive a buyout? Is the author automatically attached to screenplays and movie rights in general? Without getting too personal, if you don't want to, how are those business relationships crafted?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's more complex than if I were creating my own character. So actually, the way this one came about was that DC Comics wanted to roll out a new line of graphic novels reaching out to audiences who aren't traditional comic book readers. And so they had this idea of rolling out these graphic novels aimed primarily, but not exclusively, at young adult and middle grade, because there's so many adult readers now who read young adults. But they did want to reach out to readers who don't normally read comic books. And so they wanted to be dealing with real life teen issues, including sexuality and queer sexuality. And so they started asking around, well, who might be a good young adult author who writes primarily young adults to write a story like this? And they said, my name kept coming up. So it was a result of, all the previous novels that I've written that they reached out to me. And the way it worked was they said, we have this character, Aqualad, who, like so many of these comic book characters, they go through these different incarnations, different versions. But in a couple of previous versions, he had identified as gay. And they said, we'd like for you to write a story around that, delving into more of the emotional experience of what that was like than can be told in a 20 to 30 page comic book, or in the Aqualad is also in the cartoon series Young Justice. But in both of those medium, the comic books and the cartoons, they don't go into the emotional depth. And that's what they really wanted to focus on with this story. And so many of the reader feedback that I've gotten back has been that this wasn't, this sort of a superhero story that I expected, because it's unlike any other superhero origin story anyone has ever read, in that it's also a coming out story, and it's also a boy teen romance. And so it's all of those rolled into one. And so they asked me to do an initial pitch. And not having pitched before, I did some internet research in terms of, okay, so what's a pitch? So I put together, a one paragraph sort of teaser of what the story would be, sent that to them, heard back. They loved that. They asked for something longer. So I put together a whole story outline. And then it was based on that. DC, they're out in Hollywood. And so they're very much, their process is very sort of oriented the same way movies are, where they have the pitch and then a treatment. In this case, it was a synopsis, and then that goes before the committees, and they finally greenlight it, and we were good to go. So in terms of your question about intellectual property, how that works is they own the character rights to Aqualad. In terms of our book deal, it's a traditional sort of book deal where, you know, I got an advance and I get royalties. In terms of what would happen if this were to be developed into, you know, a screenplay, a movie, a series, the agreement was that we would then negotiate that, and that would be, you know, a fair negotiation, but that we'd have to wait till we got to that point. So, you know, I have a wonderful agent, Miriam Altschuler, been with her going on 20 years now. So, you know, she worked out all of that. So, you know, I have good reason to trust that, you know, she set that up so that, you know, it won't be the same as if it were my character, but that I would have involvement in it.
Well, I appreciate you're willing to be so candid.
Sure.
I know that that's a more personal question. I just want to remind our viewers that if you are watching live and comment or ask a question, your comment may appear on screen like this. That's always an option for all my shows when we are live. And my friend Craig Prater, who's been on the show, who is the president of the Indie Shorts International Film Festival, actually Heartland Film, and he's the president of Heartland Film in Indianapolis, says your show continues to be quality. I ended up living in Thailand because of Craig, and that's a whole other story. So one of the things that strikes me, Alex, is, and I said this in the top of the show, is unfortunately today we're still fighting bullying. And this book addresses it full on. And if I was being bullied in school, I would find great comfort in the book. You must get communication from people all over, from young people who are being bullied. Describe some of the stories of heartbreak and triumph that have been shared with you as the result of your writing.
Yeah, well, that's been one of the most, you know, rewarding aspects of, you know, writing about and for teenagers. It's getting that feedback on, you know, sometimes we forget, you know, when we're growing up, how much, you know, a book can impact us. And so I've heard from readers about, you know, how my books have been not only validating, but oftentimes lifelines that, you know, as you said, you know, teens that, you know, contemplating suicide and are looking anywhere for sources of hope. Teens who have, you know, found their voice as a result of my book. You know, I get these emails where these teens, they just write me their life stories, and it's just so moving and so touching. And you know, at first I sort of wondered, well, you know, what was prompting them to do that? And I realized, you know, it's the first time that they've had someone to reach out to tell their story. And their stories inspire me, and then I write my stories that inspire other teens, and so it becomes this whole sort of cycle of inspiration. You know, a lot of this book drew upon, you know, my own growing up and my own struggles of you know, with my sexuality and, you know, liking girls but also liking boys, and what did that mean, and you know, the bullying that went on, the name calling. And even though our country, we've had this incredible cultural shift where there's just so much more increased acceptance and visibility of LGBTQ people, that the reality is that bullying does still exist. And so the opportunity I got with this book is to present both sides of that. That on the one hand, you know, we have Kenny, who's, you know, not just the rebel, he's very out and open at school and stands up for himself. And at the same time, there are still the bullies at the school. And so I wanted to reflect both sides of that reality. And in that sense, you know, for young people reading the book, that they can get hope that, yeah, you know, bullying still does exist, and yet we have made strides. And one of the ways we've made tremendous strides is through, you know, work like yours, building community. That's a lot of what we do, whether it was books or the type of media that you do is we're building community. We're empowering each other, and that's what I'm hoping is a lot of what young people and older readers take away from this book.
Well, I can't take credit for this because in the material that your publicity team has pitched, they said this is the book to read after you read Love, Simon. Well, of course, Love, Victor just aired on Hulu, and it's the continuation of the same coming out in high school genre, and that features the Latino as well. And I'm sure this was created before we necessarily knew that show was coming along. I imagine you watched Love, Victor on Hulu.
I have to admit, I have not. I've seen the promotion for it, and it looks great. But I haven't yet. It's on my list. It's definitely on my list.
Okay, good. Well, I'm telling you, it's really fantastic. One of the things that also strikes me, you were talking. All right, so this is the first graphic novel I've ever read. So DC's goal of getting people to read something that aren't traditional consumers of the product, they achieve that with me. This is the first graphic novel. But one of the things that struck me about it is that so many superhero movies require such a high suspension of disbelief. And so much of what happens in the stories really would never happen in real life. The way people are with each other, the way they talk with each other, it all is very cartoonesque, as it should be. But really, 95% of what's in this book would and does happen in real life. Which means that when the 5% of things that happen are supernatural, they seem even more real because the rest of the book is real. That's my take on it. Have you gotten similar feedback?
Yeah, that was a lot of the fun of writing the book. And like I say, because, DC, they did want to, focus on that emotional core. I worked with a wonderful editor on this, Sarah Miller. And there were parts where she would say, "Nah, that's too superhero-y. We got to tone that down." That they really wanted to focus on the emotional story, and so it was a lot of fun to play with that. That even though this book touches on serious issues of homophobia and gay bashing, that at the same time that we could have fun with the superhero aspects, but at the same time be true to that emotional core. And the other part of that is, part of what excited me about the story is just the whole metaphor of, especially for us as queer people, oftentimes, even before a book like this, we identify with superheroes because we have this secret identity, that no one knows about. Oftentimes, growing up, we have to hide our sexuality or our true gender identity. And so we have this secret life. We have this double life, secret identity, double life. We wear this mask, presenting to the world who, the world will accept us as opposed to, who we truly are. And we face this very real supervillain, which is, homophobia and transphobia. And so playing with that metaphor then in this story where we had the Jake Hyde, the main character, where he's, both coming out in terms of his sexual orientation, but then he's also coming out and accepting, his superpowers as he's discovering them. There was just so much fun to play along with those two tracks. And, and then play along with the whole idea of what if superheroes were real? What if, as you say, everything else in our lives is as it is, and yet these superheroes exist? How would they, impact our lives?
One of the things that I wanted to add is that coming out is a superpower. And I know that that's not lost on you, and I'm sure that that was sort of an intention, and you've basically been talking about that. But really, the most powerful thing that anybody can do is to express their own truth about who they are to the people around them.
And exactly. And when you asked about the young people, who I hear from, and oftentimes they'll ask me about coming out. And what I point out to them is that, the reality of today, because homophobia, transphobia still does exist, is that it may be safe for them to come out. It may not be. What's most important is that they love and accept themselves for who they truly are, and then, test it out. And so what happens with young people today is that they may be out at home, but not at school, or they may be out at school, but not at church, different combinations of that. And so to, slowly start testing out with friends, or perhaps more sympathetic family members, and be coming out, but with that aim goal of, and I hope, that's the message that people take away from the book, that when we can truly, love and accept ourselves for who we are, that really is, as you say, that's our superpower. The fact that there has never in the history of the universe existed another person exactly like us, and there never will again. That when we can claim our voice for who we truly are, that then, unleashes this power to express ourselves, in all those positive ways in the world. And that's certainly been, so much of my story when I, as I was able to more fully accept myself, then be able to write and do other things. And I know the same is true for you.
Well, so many of us. So the theme of my network is connecting the circuitry of humanity, and my own personal life mission is to honor and express my creativity in a way that makes a difference. I want to read some of the great things about your book that other people have said.
Thank you.
This remarkable and gorgeously drawn story reveals the power of shedding the things we hide behind for safety and coming to discover that the hero we've been looking for has been within us all along. And I just want to tell you, Alex, I cried many times during your book. This might be targeted for a main viewer of young adults, but I'm young at heart, clearly, and this catapulted me back to my own high school years. Powerful and beautiful from start to finish. Don't miss the fish out of water story of love, friendship, and finding the courage to be your true self. Melissa Marr, New York Times, best-selling author of Wicked Lovely. Alex Sanchez and Julie Maroh's You Brought Me the Ocean shows us that there are many ways to be brave that have nothing to do with superpowers. Once again, we were saying that. That's Danielle Page, New York Times bestselling author of the Dorothy Must Die series. That sounds very interesting. You Brought Me the Ocean is a heartwarming story of self-discovery, family, and bravery. Alex Sanchez and Julie Maroh have created an Aqualad origin story flooded with feeling. Alex London, best-selling author of Proxy and Black Wings Beating.
Well,
You brought
as you can hear in those quotes, I mean, so much of this book was a collaboration with Julie, and Julie was just so amazing that, when we usually think about, superhero comics, they're very stylized, cartoonish characters, and Julie has their own style, and it's each one of those panels in the book is just so beautiful. And Julie is able to capture just so much emotion and expression and empathy with the characters that, never having worked with an illustrator before, and someone certainly of Julie's stature, I was a little intimidating at first. And, as you pointed out, the sketches at the back of the book, when Julie started doing their first sketches, then it was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. And just how much life and vibrancy she was able to capture in those characters. That yeah, they're definitely illustrations, but as you can see there, they're just so beautiful and just filled with so much passion and feeling and action. It was just such a joy to work with.
Tell me what you thought when you first saw this image that's on screen now.
I think I leapt back from the screen because it's just like, wow, just that it's that idea of seeing the intimacy between these two boys, and how Julie was able to capture that intimacy, that connection, that touch between them.
It's amazing. I'm going to bring up another one of Julie's illustrations, and tell me about this one.
So this is Jake's first. It's early on in the book, so it's not.
Oops, sorry, just a second. I got to bring it up again.
Sure.
Go ahead.
But it's, Jake, this is one of the first occasions where he's discovering his superpowers. And so the way it worked was that, writing a comic book, it's written in the form of a script. So it's very similar to a movie script in that, I write, the scene description, the panel description, and then a little bit of, what the action is occurring on the panel, if there's any dialogue, any sound effects. And so for this one, it's Jake, for the first time using his superpowers. And what Julie did with this, just, I mean, you can feel the water. It's just his efforts. It's just, again, well, to tell you what's happened is Julie has so inspired me that I went back to, when I was a boy, I loved to draw, and I left drawing. I had stopped doing it, and now I've gone back to drawing, and I've been working on a memoir, and it's becoming this illustrated memoir, just because I was so inspired by Julie's illustrations. And what they did was amazing, because they were cranking out 5 pages a week, and each page had an average of 3 to 6 panels on it. So 15 to 30 illustrations a week. How they were able to do this, it takes me a week just to do one.
Here's a representation of an entire page about a near kiss. My heart would be palpitating. It was, actually.
Yep. Their work is amazing.
Is there anything that you would like to add to our interview? We have time that we haven't yet touched upon.
Well, I think what I would say is how this experience was so different for me that I'd never worked on a graphic novel before. This was my first experience writing a graphic novel. And so when I got that first call from DC Comics, I said, "Do we all realize I haven't written any comic books?" And I was a little, nervous and scared about that. And they're like, "That's okay. You know how to tell a story, and that's what we're looking for. And the mechanics of writing a graphic novel, we'll give you training on." And DC, they were wonderful about the training that they gave me and the other authors who are also, rolling out these books. And so that idea of writing a script, that was new for me. The whole process of collaboration that, usually when I write a novel, I've written this whole novel, I send it to my agent, she sends it to a publisher, it's all written already. In this case, we were working off of this 12-page synopsis, and then with the editor, breaking it down into a script. And I'd never done that before. And so that was exciting. And we would go through every page. And when I write a traditional sort of manuscript, I have no idea how it's going to end up looking on the page. And with comic books, part of that script is laying out on each page, where the panels are going to be. And the most important panel on every page is that bottom right. What's going to make the reader, what's going to be the hook there? The question that's being asked that either makes the reader look up to the next page, top left, or to, more importantly, turn the page. And so what I've learned is that, a comic book is a much more interactive process. That, as that the reader is looking, it's operating on 2 levels. There's the text, which may be either captions or dialogue, and then there are the pictures. And so as I was learning how to write a graphic novel, I was reading all these graphic novels, and I was noticing, the ones that most caught my attention were panels that had some sort of action in them. So how could I write in actions that then Julie could draw and illustrate and add to? And so the whole collaborative process, and then getting back from after Sarah and I had hammered down, The first, we worked, in the books, it's 4 chapters. So the first chapter, the first 25%, when we'd hammered that out, send it to Julie, then Julie would do a storyboard. Much like a lot of movies are first done in terms of storyboards. And then we'd get back that, we'd give Julie comments on the thumbnail illustrations for the storyboards, and then they would make adjustments to that. So this whole collaborative process was just so new to me and so energizing to be learning all this as I was writing the story. And I should really say as we were writing the story, because as I say, it was so collaborative. And then learning in that process, because the graphic novel, you saw, Nicholas, that there's some pages that have no dialogue. And oftentimes what would happen is we'd get these amazing illustrations back from Julie, and we'd say, you know what? We don't need that caption. We don't need that dialogue, because Julie had captured so much in the illustration.
A picture paints 1,000 words.
Exactly.
Because everyone who's watched the program this far has such a deeper understanding of the book, I'm going to show the trailer again, and we'll come back afterwards for some final thoughts.
I'm Jake Hyde. Sometimes I feel like a fish out of water. For as long as I can remember, I've dreamt of a world I've never seen. I have this strange ability to control water. Is that my purpose? Then there's Kenny. I've known him since middle school. He's always been outspoken in a way I wish I could be. Should I tell my best friend Maria how I feel about Kenny? I've hidden myself so much, even I'm not sure who I am now. Will I be doomed to drift through life in a sea of secrets?
You Brought Me the Ocean is the book. What's some famous last words for today's broadcast?
Well, I think I've covered it. What came to mind as I was watching that trailer was one of the things too, and I just keep giving Julie so much credit in terms of having made the book. And in the same way, as a writer, I use all my writerly tools, and one of them is escalating conflict during the course of the story. That one of the things Julie did in the book is that you may notice the colors keep becoming more and more vibrant as the story goes on. Again, to capture that sense of empowerment, that when we come out to the world, come out to ourselves, how much more powerful that makes us, how much more empowered that makes us. So I think that would be the note to wrap up with, unless you have any more.
No, I couldn't have said it better. I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, Nicholas. It's been great, and it's been great catching up with you and seeing you again. So thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure. If you stay put, I can speak to you right after the show, which ends pretty much now. I'll talk to you in a minute.
All right. Thank you. Thank everyone. And you can find out more about me at my website there, alexsanchez.com, and you can get the book wherever books are sold.
Fantastic. I'm going to be saying goodbye to you now because I want to talk to Alex off camera. But once again, this concludes the launch summer season of the expansion of PromoHomo.TV into a full-fledged network with 5 different shows. My fall season that will go for 10 weeks will launch in September. You can follow me on all my social, and you already know how to do that. And until next time, I'm Nicholas Snow.